Oh man, are women deacons okay? Absolutely and
Bro.
unequivocally not.
Bro.
You see like the absolutely idiotic and utterly like impious tweets on Twitter of these absolutely rebellious and Jezebel women talking about how there were female deacons in the early church and it's only misogyny that keeps the church from it. May God rebuke them. May Saint Michael and his angels throw them down from their heights of wickedness and pride. In the early church, yes, there were female deacons, but these utter fools do not realize that diakonos has even secular meanings. It's like when the word apostle is used in a very loose sense. It's the same way with the word deacon. It was used in a very loose sense. And a deaconess, as it's made very clear in the Council of Nicaea, does not have the laying on of hands. She's not in holy orders. She is a servant of the church as we would kind of think of like like a nun, kind of a little bit of a higher version of a nun. And yes, if you want to bring back the order of deaconesses as more explicitly like serving a local parish, and it's usually some sort of widow, then go ahead. But these wicked fools who are attempting to pervert the doctrine of the Holy and Apostolic Church should be utterly silenced by the Holy Father and by our leaders that be. It is wickedness and it is disgusting, and I despise it, and it will bring about the destruction of the church, which is not possible. Therefore, it will not happen. So you can keep coping and crying. You'll never be a deacon. You should just go back to your husband, have more children, take care of those children, and in humility pray and stop in your wicked pride trying to usurp all men. You wicked feminist.
I actually think this topic is super interesting, like finding out like what the early church was actually doing. Uh, so like it's weird because in the East, a lot of the things that we shelved because we didn't have use for them anymore, like continued. And often it became like over exaggerated, as I'm sure you know. It happened in the West too. Like you had this freakish situation where a couple of bishops started trying to ordain female priests in southern Italy. Do you know
Yeah.
about this?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know about it.
and the Pope was like, stop. Like right now, stop. No more of this. And then there were like councils held, even like papal councils were held to tell people stop doing this.
Yeah, we've known about this for a very long time. It's not like
Yeah,
we're just like finding out about this in the 20th century.
yeah, exactly. I think one of the main problems is that um, major orders are a participation in the episcopate because all of the major orders are derived from a single sacrament of holy orders. All of the major orders are a certain participation in the powers that are proper to a bishop. And so, if a woman can have any level of that, there's a serious question there about lots of things. So, if you accept, there are many good theological reasons to accept that bishops and priests have to be men. And once you start asking questions about like female major order deacons, then you open a lot of things that shouldn't be opened and can't be opened. And I also think that like in the very early church, like in the apostolic tradition of whether you think it's really from him or not, Saint Hippolytus of Rome, there's actually like an ordination rite for widows. But no one is trying to say, oh, we found an ordination rite for widows. That means widows are a major order. So why are people trying to do this with deaconesses? Just because we found things like there's this 8th century prayer that goes, Lord Master, you do not reject women who dedicate themselves to you and who are willing in a becoming way to serve your holy house, but admit them to the order of your ministers. Grant them the gift of your Holy Spirit also to your maidservant who wants to dedicate herself to you, and fulfill in her the grace of ministry of the diaconate as you granted to Phoebe the grace of your diaconate, who you would call to work of the ministry. This is an 8th century Greek text, right? Yeah. Like just because we have ordination rites that exist like this doesn't mean that the diaconate, like Christian said, is referring to this like non-etymological kind of like sacramental order. It's referring more explicitly in a more literal sense to like an order of servants for the parish or the cathedral, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Yeah, so like women would deliver the Eucharist to women in places men couldn't go. They would baptize women. because women used to be immersed naked and the priest couldn't be doing that, and stuff like this. So women would have these sorts of roles. They would probably be cleaning and so on. They wouldn't have the same sorts of roles as men in the major order of the diaconate. It's a completely different role. However, there were times and places where the female role did become overinflated and become like a liturgical distribution of the Eucharist. And that's when basically councils started to be held to tell people to stop having female deacons altogether, because people realized that that was the direction this was going to develop in. And that's why the female deacon was phased out entirely from history, because it had this tendency to develop into something inappropriate.
Exactly. I think it's the same way with the type of um, honors that were given to abbesses. Like if you look in the late medieval church, abbesses, like they would sometimes wear the mitre. They'd have the crozier, and you would have issues with these abbesses trying to rule over male priests who were serving the sisters. They would try to, even in some cases, absolve from sins rather than just absolving against the faults of a rule. So that was part of some of the liturgical practice of the late medieval church, and a lot of that was eventually phased out and rebuked by the Holy See, because they were trying to overtake and go too far with a lot of the powers that had been traditionally given to them. And a lot of these are clear local corruptions that were never. It was imprudent. It was imprudent, guys. That's what I'm trying to say.